Hey, you. Thanks for tapping into another episode of Untapped Keg podcast, where we explore different perspectives of sobriety and mental health so that you can take something and implement it into your own life. Where we believe there's only one right way to sobriety. That's the way that works for you. I'm RJ Zimmerman, and today I'm extremely excited to have Jessica Bencomo, a.k.a. Snaps, from twitch.tv and a meditation teacher and also content creator around mental health. How are you doing today, Jessica? Thanks for joining
I'm
us.
doing well. Thank you for having me.
This is this is really great because you and I we had a conversation to talk about our episode and then life's, and it was such a wonderful conversation that I can't wait to have uh talk about this with you. So for those who are first being introduced to you, could you give us a little bit of background into yourself?
Sure thing. So, most people know me by Snaps at this point because I've been a content creator for 8 years. Started out streaming on Twitch in gaming, and part of the reason for my name, which was She Snaps, is because I used to struggle a lot with anger. Although at that time I probably wouldn't have described it as a struggle. It was a little more of a treat, maybe a little pleasure, just this kind of excitement of like, yeah, I'm an angry person. Who cares? And it was very much encouraged by the community at that time. So it was kind of like a novelty. People would be hanging out in streams while I was gaming, and I did a lot more like competitive FPS stuff at that time. And if I snapped on someone, then there would be, cheers and excitement over me getting really aggro. And I would never consider myself to be a person who would like go out of my way to be unkind to someone, but I was just kind of always simmering with rage to the point where I was kind of hoping someone would come in and try me. And then those were the moments that my community would get very excited for, is someone coming in and trolling or saying something unkind. And then it was like being kids again, like, ooh. So it was like it was just goofy. It was silly. I had a lot of fun, but it was also not really healthy. I don't think that I couldn't really say that I was running a non-toxic community at that point. And then I met my partner, my now partner, through the community, through gaming. We actually met through the game Destiny, which is what brought me to Twitch in the first place.
Yeah.
And I know, right? I still think it's such a trip when I get to tell people that like Destiny is what brought me to Twitch. Destiny is what introduced me to my partner. Destiny is where the majority of my close friends are from now. Like I would not be in this relationship. I wouldn't have a baby. I wouldn't be living in Arizona. Like all of the things that have changed in my life came from Destiny.
Now that you put it that way, because I was talking about the game, and now it's like, oh my god,
That's
because
what I'm saying, right?
I had so much time I put into the first Destiny, like,
Oh, it was a magical time. Yeah.
yes.
So yeah, Destiny, however you want to take that, brought me into this wonderful relationship with my partner Alex, and he introduced me to meditation really early on in our relationship when I was still like, dealing with a lot of anger, and I had struggled with severe depression, anxiety, panic attacks, social anxiety. Like I could barely sleep at night. I'd had insomnia since I was a kid. I had struggled when I was younger with ideation. I did attempt when I was 15 or 16. And then after that, I had committed to not causing any more harm to myself, but I still didn't want to be here. So I pretty much was like praying for a bus to hit me every day. And then I met him. He introduced me to meditation. And it was just this kind of slow, shocking shift of awareness, of recognizing the reality of my suffering, of recognizing the truth of the anger that I was working with. And totally unintentionally, my content shifted from being the like angry gamer to being someone who had a heavy emphasis on mental health discussions, on things that can help others to feel better. After I got to a point where I could tell people, like, yo, I'm actually not depressed anymore. I genuinely never thought I would see that day. Like, I don't have panic attacks anymore. I can sleep at night. I feel happy. What the fuck? And I told people about it because it was so shocking. And I got so many people saying, like, what, how, why? And that's when I wrote up the 5 steps to better mental health. created S.H.A.D.E.S as an acronym for self-care, started talking at gaming events and at I did a talk at an adult protective services conference, like talking to social workers and therapists and police officers about self-care. I was supposed to do the keynote the following year, and then COVID hit. But yeah, it was kind of this like wild transformation that I'm really grateful happened live. Like I was streaming every day. So people were coming in and being absolutely shocked when someone would come in and say something mean to me. And I would just be like, hey, are you okay, dude? Like, what's going on with you that makes you think that's an okay thing to talk to or to say to someone? So the lack of like angry rage out moments in games, the conversations around mental health and everything, it just became this really beautiful kind of community transformation. A lot of other people started to try out meditation and mindful practices, started to prioritize their mental health. And then the culture, like our shift in the community, went from everybody make fun of the person who came in to talk shit to like everyone being so deeply rooted in compassion that when someone comes in and says something cruel, and I'm saying like people have said the absolute most unimaginably cruel things to me, especially after some deaths in my family. And even then, people see it and their hearts just break like, oh my gosh. And then that person will come in, say this awful thing, and be hit with so many messages from people like, hey, I used to feel similarly. Hit me up if you want to talk. Hey, I'm sorry for whatever is going on. If you apologize, you can stick around and we can talk about it. And yeah, so it's been kind of a fascinating transformation. And now I'm enrolled in a 2-year meditation teacher training program so that I can really hone my skills a little bit better and help provide more support and resources to people.
That is that is amazing, right? To go from, and I'm not gonna lie, destiny, I can see how that takes you to another level, but also going from that person with that simmering anger that is underneath, like that Hulk line, that's the
Mm-hmm.
key. I'm always angry. Like the reason that resonates with everybody is because that's the truth. That's how so many of us feel. And so going from snapping, like, at the snap of the fingers, to having almost like poetry and yeah, all right, right? Like that's kind of what I
I
envisioned.
literally do that to people now too when they're in my chat or like hanging out and they're speaking some truth. I'm like, yes,
Give
let's
me some
go.
more. it's um it's wild. And as somebody who has had a similar journey, different, right? But similar, from
Mhm.
having that quick anger, having always having it, and not being seen as um somebody who's I mean, and when I was younger, I was seen as somebody who had a temper problem, but there was a time where people looked at me and didn't think that I did, but oh, I absolutely did. And now being where I am, people coming in being like, "Hey, why do you feel like you telling me that I'm sober is making you feel terrible? What's
Mm.
going on? Do you want to talk about why that's making you feel so bad?" And then you see those people kind of like shrink away rather than embrace it. But it's the truth that that's where that comes from. So
Mhm.
as you're following this meditation and you're watching like your community and all of this change in your life, was there a moment where things just kind of aligned and you're like, this way of life is what I've been looking for? Or was it so gradual that now you look back at it and you're like, wow, that's been a heck of a transformation?
That's a cool question. I would say at first it was gradual. Like there were these really nice moments where I'd be like, whoa, I was feeling very angry. And what I'd started doing is practicing gratitude in the midst of moments of anger. So I'd be, in my kitchen pissed about something dumb and I would be like,
Mm-hmm.
and I would count out on one hand 5 things I was grateful for. And kind of unintentionally, symbolically, it was like as soon as the fist was unclenched and I had my hand open, I was feeling a lot calmer already. So just I think like the initial shift of you are not your thoughts, coming into a position of witnessing your thoughts and witnessing what's going on in your body, that was already massive but gradual, because you really build up so much awareness moment by moment by moment by moment that you're just in
Absolutely.
this kind of state of like open learning all the time. Like, oh, how fascinating. All they said is this word, and my back tensed up like crazy over that. Whoa. So initially, I think it was very gradual, but very eye opening. Like, I'd had a moment where I fully committed, like, I'm so sick and tired of being sick and tired and angry. I will not do this anymore. And there was like a very specific moment that I've talked about before where that really hit for me, because I was in an abusive relationship for nearly 9 years. And I was in that relationship when I started on Twitch. Fortunately, the kindness of the community kind of helped me see that the way that I was being treated and spoken to wasn't okay. And after leaving that relationship and then my partner moving in with me when we got together, there was a morning where I was in the bathroom getting ready for stream, and like I would wake up pissed off over who fucking knows what, but I would wake up angry, agitated, and I'd be in there, slamming drawers and closing cabinets aggressively. And I remember my partner waking up and walking past the bathroom door to head to his office, and I just caught this look out of the corner of his eyes where it was kind of like, do I say hi? Do I just keep going? And I'm grateful that I had never like pointed my anger at him. It was all like self-contained or like kind of contained to a small vicinity. But it was that look that just fucked me up, because I saw myself. I saw all the moments with every other abusive relationship, with my dad, with like all of the times in my life where I was like, are you going to be nice to me today? Are you going to be mean to me? Do I need to avoid you? The idea of putting another person through that walking on eggshells kind of life just could not do it. Could not. So that was when I made that, like, I will do whatever it takes to figure this shit out. And then it was gradual until psychedelics got introduced. And that, like, I want to add this disclaimer here. I'm not an advocate for like everyone trying psychedelics. I think that they are an incredible tool, and they're also very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't have the right mindset going in, if you don't have the right settings, if you don't have safe access, if you are a person who has psychosis or a history of psychosis in your family, for some folks with bipolar, like there's a long list of reasons why it's not right for everyone. But I did probably a year or two of research before a friend of ours actually offered to grow some for us to try. And it was just such a shocking experience to go into a psychedelic experience mindfully, very intentionally, doing it sort of like the therapeutic approach, putting a mask over my eyes, putting headphones on, and spending a lot more time internal rather than kind of just like walking around poking all the squishy stuff. And it was during some of those early psychedelic experiences that I had some just perspective shifts that you kind of can't come back from. Like in one of my psychedelic experiences, I lived my ex-boyfriend's entire life from like birth to death in probably 20 minutes. And in that amount of time, whether all of it was real or not, like the stuff I knew was probably accurate, but a lot of it was probably a mess. But in that amount of time, I came out of it with like, wow, I don't hold anything against him anymore. I don't feel any kind of like struggle to forgive or blame or shame. It was just like, if I had lived his life, I could have been him. Like all of the conditions that came together to create this angry person who was so controlling and judgmental and critical, that could have fucking been me. So that was like, whoo, holy crap, I got to let a lot go there. And then I had an experience of like full on ego dissolution, ego death, whatever someone wants to call it. And that was where it kind of like severed the final attachment between myself and this idea that I was a depressed person. I was a person with depression, rather than the sort of like subtle shift of someone suffering from depression. It was no longer, this is
Yeah.
something that is mine, my anger, my anxiety, my depression. It was just very clear, like, oh, I just spent like 3, 4 hours completely nothing, like not depressed, not myself even. if I can do that with drugs, then it can be done, right? So that was kind of where it like really shifted for me into this like, wow, things are way different than I thought they were, and things can be way different than I ever imagined. And it's just kind of progressed since then, especially with a lot of heavy emphasis on the practices.
There, there's a lot there, and it's amazing, like how what you've learned are things that I have also learned, and I just have different language for it and different things. But I literally talked with a friend of mine who is also a recovery coach about psychedelics yesterday, because it's one of those things that you kind of have to have an opinion on it in this space.
Mm,
And the thing is that I that's how I have the same opinion. It is unique. It is up to you, right? I am not a person who is against alcohol, against honestly marijuana. These drugs, what I'm against is the escapism that gets to a point that it is a detriment to your life. And as you look at
mhm,
the research and you do things like the therapeutic approach that you had taken, there is a lot of research that is showing that responsibly doing it can lead to benefits. But like you said, if you're irresponsible with it, if you're just laissez-faire about it, if you just are shooting from the hip, there's a chance that it goes really wrong. And having that understanding is a decision that you have to, an individual decision. Do you think you can benefit from it or not? And along with that, what you said about that subtle shift of I am like the identifying with
mhm.
your um what the because I just recorded a video on this yesterday, a short one that I'm going to post to social media. When you identify with your diagnosis, that's what I said,
Mm,
or this is for anything, and I've said this before, whether it's sobriety, whether it's being, if you want
yes.
to call yourself an alcoholic, addiction, same thing, ADHD, I have ADHD. If I use that as my identity, that is when it takes control of me. That is
Yeah.
when things are not going to get better, because I'm going to make excuses so that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that is what it is. And this is where shame comes in, where it's
Mhm.
very much the same, the language that you use. So if you look at your past and you use your past to define and identify you, that is who you're going to be going forward.
Yep.
So that's where we get stuck in our shame and the thought loops. And that's where I got stuck in my anger. That's where it sounds like you kind of got stuck in your anger. And I mean, it's built up. That ego death that you talked about, I can resonate with that too. Like all of this. And when you can take an outcome and an action that you did and separate yourself from it, your self-talk becomes more neutral. It becomes
Mhm.
more, I can actually use this. I can be productive with it. But also I can see myself for how I want to identify myself. How do I want to define myself going forward? And you realize that you get to make the choice. Is the past going to define me? Is my diagnosis going to define me? Or am I going to use it to better understand myself so that I can choose how I define me going forward?
Mhm.
And like, I am a bad person. So you have these memories that come back that are, this is why I'm a bad person. Or I acted like a total asshole. I do
Yes.
not want to act like that going forward. Right. I did some shit that is, should not be forgiven. Right. That's okay that you have that. But that doesn't mean that you have to focus on it and punish yourself going forward. That means that you can do better going forward and
Mhm.
use it to make better decisions rather than use it to keep you stuck in a negative state all the time. And that's where that escapist, the addictions, the coping mechanisms that become a negative detriment on our life get stuck. So a lot of what you said is a lot of what I've also done. And
Mhm.
it's amazing, it just when you hear mental health journeys and sobriety and addiction journeys and how parallel they are, and just how much life is. um it really is about finding what works for you so that you can move forward into your best self.
Yeah. Yeah. That,
I know I said a
when
lot there.
when I think you touched on something that we had, like, I'm having flashbacks of walking in my garden
Yeah.
during our conversation. I think we had talked about how, like, earlier on in my life and in my journey, like, I definitely had very unhealthy relationships with weed, with alcohol. Like, there was a time in my youth where I'm so grateful that certain drugs just were not around me, because if they had been, no doubt there was only one that I said was a no-no for me, and it was because of, like, what had happened with my birth mom abandoning my brother, sister, and I as kids, because she had struggled with cocaine addiction. So, like, growing up, I had heard that from my family a bunch. So I was like, I'll never do cocaine. But anything else would have 100% been on the table. And I'm super fortunate that it just wasn't presented to me, because, like, man, there was a time where people were just handing me random pills in the hallway at school, and I'd be like, what is this? Don't care, just pop it in. Like, just so many examples of stuff that now, like, horrifies me to think about all the ways it could have gone wrong. So, like, earlier on in my streaming career, because social anxiety was still so strong, because anxiety period was so strong, and because I had such a kind of a, like, a bias towards more anger, more tension, more depression, I would smoke a ton of weed. Like, in order to get out of the house, I would usually smoke a joint or a bowl. I would do a dab or two, which, if you're not familiar, that's concentrate, like, really potent stuff. And then I would usually roll 2 to 3 joints for the trip. Like, I remember going to the first Twitch Chicago meetup, and I had like 3 joints in my wallet, and I was just pacing the house, power smoking everything in sight, just like trying to get my shit together to go. And as I kind of progressed in this journey, it was just this natural awareness of, like, huh, so it turns out I don't think I needed this. Or in moments where I would go to smoke or do something, I would say, like, wait, why am I doing this? And that's
Mm.
where the notion of escape versus enhance came in. And I think this is one of the things that we had talked about, is that I set a rule for myself that if I'm about to indulge in anything, if it was weed or alcohol or anything that could easily be a form of escapism, shopping, sex, going and streaming, even whatever, gaming, the stuff that I know I can, like, really get into, I would always ask myself, am I looking to escape something right now, escape my life, escape a certain feeling, or am I looking to enhance my life? So if the answer is escape, like, I'm feeling some feelings I don't really want to be feeling, I would go and I would sit and I would meditate or go for a walk or do something. And if it was enhanced, like, no, actually, I feel pretty good. I'm just looking to get froggy right now. I want to get weird with it. Totally different thing. Then it was like, okay, indulge, have some fun. Still being mindful. Because, like, it could be indulge or enhance up until that first anxious thought comes in, and now suddenly enhancing is back to escaping. So it's like a constant, like, awareness of what is the purpose behind this. So I've shared that with a lot of folks in the community of who I know struggle with other types of addiction. Are you looking to escape something right now, because it's not going anywhere? Just because you've sort of numbed yourself to it does not mean it's gone. Your psyche does not forget. You have that foreboding feeling, that really ugh feeling behind that sort of elevated state. The crash is gonna suck. It's gonna fucking suck so bad. Go breathe, go meditate, do a breathing exercise, do something that feels grounding to you, anything that allows you to meet that moment, and then choose where you go from there.
Mm. And now that you say that, I do remember talking about escape versus enhance. And I I literally ask myself this often when I have a task to do and I'm looking at my phone. Okay, what am I distracting myself from right now? Is it the
Mm.
work that I'm doing? Is it feelings on the other side? Which is it? And what can I do to get myself back where I need to be? Sometimes it's do that task, sometimes it's go for a 10 to 20-minute walk.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's change my location. Like
Yeah.
I'll be at home. Okay, I just need to go to a coffee shop and I need to be around people because body doubling is a thing with ADHD. So that's where taking it as an understanding of yourself, it enhances your life, to use exactly what you're talking about, compared to using it as an excuse. Oh, I'm distractible because I have ADHD, so I'm just not going to
Mm-hmm.
do it. Instead of, I know that if I'm around people, coffee shop, library, areas where people are going to be around, it's not distracting to me. It actually is soothing. So when people are around and they're doing their own thing, it allows me to feel like I can do my own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That, like, I also have ADHD, and sometimes that collective chaotic energy that you don't have to pay attention to is just so like, yes, you all
Yes.
live around me and I will do my thing now.
So ADHD moment. I just want to do you notice when you go for walks, like people tell me all the time, walk listening to nature, right? Just don't have anything in your I put my noise canceling headphones in and I cancel out the noise and it
Mm.
enhances my walks because and I don't know what it is. It might just be a me thing, but I'm curious if it's something that might be I'm taking away a stimulus and so it's allowing me to focus with my other senses and so that allows me to be a little bit more present
What is
in the
that the
moment.
goal for you? Is like presence in the moment? Is that how you're defining like a successful walk in this instance?
Well, that is a great question and that answers a lot because in those instances generally it's allowing my thoughts, it's like a meditative mindful allowing my thoughts to pass, right,
Mm.
rather than get into cycles. And so when I put those noise canceling headphones in and I just am zoned out and I can just it allows me to appreciate and be in the now and the present and it allows my thoughts to really progress through rather than getting stopped. Like I've worked through a lot of honestly a lot of trauma, a lot of triggers, a lot of different really difficult moments this way. And
Mm.
it's actually led me to some creative moments as well where I've had some, going from how do I define myself as a coach? Oh, self-discovery after alcohol. Well, and then like my course that I created with that and everything like that, like it came from those types of situations. And so I don't know, it's just interesting that I've noticed that, especially
Hmm.
when people are like, no, you need to listen to nature and pay attention and it keeps you present. But it doesn't for me, not necessarily. There's moments that I enjoy that, right? But for the most part, when I put those noise canceling in and I don't hear much, it it gives me that sense of more of a sense of peace.
Hmm. It sounds like the main difference then is that what you're talking about is something almost more in line with like this notion of thinkitation, where you're sort of keeping certain questions in mind, paying attention to mind states, like this is what I want to think about on this walk. So it makes a lot of sense that you would want to be like, okay, let me just block out some of the things that might get me from like this question I'm working on, like what do I want my theme of this podcast to be? It might otherwise be like, oh, what kind of bird is that? That was a cool noise, right? Like you suddenly are gone. So if your goal for the walk is to work within your mind, release the stuff that is unnecessary and lean into the questions that are useful, into the ideas that are useful, then it makes perfect sense why you would want the headphones. If the goal for the walk is just straight up presence, then leaving the headphones behind offers you an opportunity to see what your real experience is of a walk. And you can just kind of do the open awareness thing then of like hearing, seeing, feeling. You're feeling your feet walking and you're noticing how quickly your awareness bounces between like, oh, these pants are a little tight on my waist, or like, oh, that was a beautiful bird. Oh, that cloud looks like, and it just keeps going. So that can be incredibly grounding in a sort of a decentering kind of way. You're just letting it all be there and letting yourself be a part of it. So, like taking the headphones off to just be one with everything and let yourself notice it all, totally different from I want to go and walk and problem solve some stuff. I want to go and walk and kind of clear out a little bit of the clutter. So it just depends on, I guess, the goal of it, but I think there's room for all of it. And yeah, any ability to kind of limit the sensory input, especially with ADHD minds, is going to be huge.
That I am so glad that I took that side path because wow. And I guess, one thing that we wanted to talk about was grief and processing grief and working through a lot of stuff. And that is actually how I found that this works for me is processing the grief from my divorce and
Mm.
how that helped me to like work through what I really wanted to do was I wanted to dissect the relationship. Where was the failure? Like I accept my responsibility, right?
Mhm.
What can I control going forward? What can I let go and look at and really understand myself and how I act and behave and how I can change going forward. So, and then that's allowed me to really process triggers and work through some really difficult moments. So, with mindfulness and meditation, and they're often linked, but they're two different things.
Mhm.
With grief, what have you found to really be able to um, bring you back to now in the center and allow you to process those emotions and feelings?
Mm. I think that this is a cool segue into it because you mentioning that sometimes you need to block things out in order to see it, that's like it points to this aversion that we all have, which is to pain. We
Mm,
we have been so conditioned to believe that pain equals bad, that discomfort equals bad, that if you
yes.
feel bad, it means you are bad or that something is wrong. And learning how to work with and kind of identify that aversion and see the things that help the aversion can be really useful because you can see, like, oh, I don't want to feel this pain. And that's actually a common question that we ask in like meditation practices as a part of the training I'm doing is, what am I unwilling to feel right now? And once you kind of get to the core of it, of like, what is it that is kind of calling for my attention, you can start to see, oh, these are all the things that are making it to where I don't pay attention to that. Like for me, I am very easily activated by my home being cluttered. It fucks with my brain. I feel a lot more tense. I feel a lot more like
Yes.
I just have to do this. So if I'm hurting, if I'm having a day where grief is coming up, it's kind of bubbling up from the surface and I'm feeling that, as soon as that first bit of discomfort, that first kind of pain point hits, I am going to clean the fuck out of my space. That's where I'm going. I'm going to go clean the kitchen. My brain will tell me the surface level response is you just feel bad because your kitchen's a mess. Once you get that clean, everything will be fine. So if I go outside and instead of doing the like cleaning my home thing, if I go sit and I just close my eyes and meditate for a while, then I can start to see the kind of layers peel back. And what I tend to find in those moments is like, oh, that's there it is. That's the point of vulnerability. That's the pain point that I was missing. So, like, in the moment, grief or sadness or anything arising naturally is an invitation to explore it for me. And that typically is done through first recognizing it, oh, grief, sadness, naming it. And this also kind of aligns with this really great practice called the RAIN method. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar with that. Yeah, so recognize, allow, investigate, nurture. Used to be non attachment. The more common one now is nurture, but I kind of like them both. So I'll sit and name it gently to myself what it is I'm seeing. And then there's the process of kind of allowing or opening to it. That's where, depending on how much time I have, I like if I know I've got the time to process it, then I can not only say it's okay that I'm feeling this as a part of the allowing, but I can also really open and say, get as big as you need to get, like feel it. I sometimes it helps to assume a posture or a facial expression that really embodies that grief or that sadness or anger or frustration or whatever. Other times if I know I don't really have the time, then I kind of have to skip that, knowing it's something I'm going to have to prioritize in the future. I can't just keep accepting and kind of pushing past. So I'll go outside, recognize, I'll allow it, investigated in my body. I typically start with the somatic experiences, with regular emphasis of like how do things feel in my throat, chest, and belly. Those are
Hmm.
usually really common areas of holding. Then I'll ask myself, what am I believing right now? What's the story that's going on right now? That's part of the investigation of like, what are the narratives and how do I feel? And then from there, I get a little more insight into the way my specific brand of suffering in that moment is kind of playing out. And I can offer myself some care and some nurturing. That's the part that I think the majority of people that I talk to skip. People are okay with allowing and acknowledging their own suffering, but as soon as you tell them, like, hey, be nice to yourself, that's where they're like, listen, whoa, whoa,
What
whoa.
the fuck do you mean be nice to myself? No way.
Exactly. Exactly. But I did this to
What
myself,
do you
but I
think I'm a
deserve
wuss?
it. Yeah. Any of those like ridiculous ways it can go. So it can be just as simple as like putting a hand on my heart, taking some deep breaths, stretching my body to help release the tension, anything that I can do to offer myself genuine compassion. Once grief gets to a point where it is coloring more of the moments of my days, where I'm seeing that those little moments of like checking in and doing it, it's not enough. Like I need to sit and I need to cry this shit out really hard. I started to institute a grief day. And part of it is because I used to do psychedelics as a way to help, to be like, okay, this is the thing. I've been working on it for a while. Now I'm going to go and spend 6 hours, like kind of opening to whatever comes in. But I was either pregnant or nursing and wasn't able to do psychedelics anymore because obviously I'm not trying to make my baby trip balls. So I would skip that. So I decided that I would set aside the same amount of time, that I would give myself 6 hours, because that's what typically for like psychedelics, well, not for all of them, for psilocybin, it would be about a 6 hour trip. So my partner took our baby out of the house, and I told myself, this 6 hours is my grief window. It was just a full invitation to focus on that grief in a very mindfully intentional way. Like, this is the emphasis of my work today. Anything else is secondary. I don't need to clean. I don't need to problem solve. There is nothing else that is more important than me kind of giving attention and giving voice to this grief. I actually recorded some videos of it. I shared them with Stream somewhat recently because we were talking about this. But I basically told myself as soon as they left the house, I was going to kind of jump right into it. And I started off by looking at pictures and videos and just like really immersing myself in like text messages and things from the people who I've lost. And then cried a bunch from that. And after doing a good amount of that and kind of sitting and meditating and thinking about them, I sat and wrote in my journal letters to each of the kind of primary folks who I was really missing. And that part was especially important to me, and it's what I include in grief days since, is the deliberate focus on each individual person, because a lot of times the grief is this sort of amalgamation. It's just this mess of all of the people I've lost, and it's a lot. And the most recent losses in my life were my brother and my niece, who died on the same day. And that was really hard because my niece was younger. My brother was a year older than I. My niece was almost 9. So it became this like pain point of, I don't feel like I have enough time to notice the grief I have for her because I didn't live an entire life with her. She wasn't there for like all of these major moments. So
Yeah.
then the grief would turn into guilt of like, I don't grieve her enough. So when I sat and I wrote out these letters to each of them, that's when it like, whew, ugh, that hurt. Like, I was hearing noises coming out of myself I've never heard. I wailed and sobbed and like really, really felt it. And after I was done, after I kind of finished the last journal or the last letter to them, and I closed my journal and I just sat there staring out the window, I saw that I was like coming to the end of my window that I had set for this. And I was like, okay. I went into the bathroom and blew my nose, and because I was just a freaking mess. And I came back out and I felt like I was tripping. It was wild. I was looking out the window and being like, the colors are so vivid. I can feel my body. And the deepest, the most pervasive, the most kind of all consuming, enveloping feeling that I felt was love. I felt so deeply connected to them again because I got to really pay attention to them and to remember that it wouldn't hurt so fucking bad if I didn't love them so much. So that was one of those like, holy shit, this is huge. I will do this again every chance I get, every time I need to, because grief really is so big and it deserves more than this passing attention. Like it's if we're only meeting ourselves at the surface level of the grief, we're only kind of putting band-aids on the wound. And what we really need is to like let it be open, let ourselves feel the severity of it. And this is going to vary on based on like person to person and your ability to feel safe in situations like this. You might want to have someone at home with you. You might want to do this in the presence of like a therapist or a mental health professional or something. But for me, I felt safe in the getting back up off the ground thing because I had had other moments where I really surrendered to my feelings and saw that they pass. That as much as I fear not being able to get back up again if I really touch that grief, it was surprisingly animating for me. It brought a lot of life back into my existence, a lot of gratitude. So, yeah, it's been a while. I think it's been a year since I had my last grief day. And I even told my partner recently, like, I think it's coming again. I think I'm gonna need another day because these like moments of processing it, I'm starting to feel like it's not quite enough again.
That's um that's amazing self-awareness and the creativity that you have to create that, right? Create that space for yourself. And I like how you went in depth too with talking about rain, and there's, other acronyms for feeling your feelings and getting through it, but it's our aversion to pain and fear and the unknown, and having that. How often do we choose to continue our own suffering because it's unknown compared to moving into the discomfort of the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
and you can actually be thriving and living a life that you're proud of. And um, you mentioned the somatic experience, and for those who don't know, that is where your emotions and feelings are manifesting in your body. And there's heat maps. This is science that it does. So if you take a moment and you notice where your shoulders are, this is a really good one, especially for men. Notice where your shoulders are. Just let them drop to the sides, and especially if you feel tension, and then stretch your back a little bit and notice how your mood shifts. And like that is somatic. That is what people mean when they talk about the somatic experience. And the stories that we can talk ourselves and keep ourselves in. And if you can notice that you're telling yourself a story, and like you said, being able to realize that. And I like to say, differentiate between the story and the truth, the
Mm-hmm.
opinions and the facts. And then you can really sort through. Um, but it's it's so human to externalize feeling good, right? Like you said with the cleaning, and how much this goes to goals. This goes to when you don't like yourself, right? You have that aversion for yourself. And if I get that job, if I make this amount of money, if I
Mm-hmm.
buy that house, I'm going to finally feel good. This, those are all me. Those are all things that I told myself. It was not those moments when I felt good, right? It took a divorce. It took taking a 50% pay cut for a job that I didn't like. It took a lot of things that you would look at and say, how can you actually feel good about yourself right now? And the truth was, I was finally honest with myself and
Mm-hmm.
facing the truths instead of the stories. And there's so much that you can work through. before I started, this really self-discovery journey and really got on it, and I would say that's about 2 years ago, I cried five-ish times from the time I was probably 12, actually probably before that, five-ish times, and I can count them on my hand.
Mm.
And since that 2 years, I have cried at least monthly. But there were moments it was daily, there were moments it was weekly, and not just cried, but sobbed. Left work and went out to my truck to sob for 20 minutes and then coming back in and realizing that release of that energy
Mm.
is exactly what you need to reset rather than hold it in and just tightening that spring and getting all that tension. Eventually, it just explodes. And it's
Yep.
never in moments that you want it to. It's never
Mhm.
on the people that it should be. It's always on the people that you love and care about. And man, so you talked about journaling too. And I was not a person who was ever going to journal. I used to, my friend, and maybe Up for the Challenge, who was a mental health streamer. He still has a podcast in the UK, and he would tell me, "You need to have two journals, RJ. You need to have two journals." I'm like, "No, I'm not fucking journaling. Quit talking to me about journaling. It's a waste of fucking time." I was in so much agony and grief over being separated from the person that I chose as my family, from the love of my life, and I was having a panic attack for the first time in my life. And I just, fuck it, grabbed a notebook, grabbed a pen, had no idea what was coming. And I, whatever was on my hand was going to write, it was going to write. I ended up writing poetry. And I don't
Mm.
write poetry. I don't really read poetry. And I wrote short stories that I look at now and I'm like, where did this come from? Like this inner understanding. And when you can find that outlet that allows you to understand that you're human and that you can feel these without the guilt, without that shame, it changes, like you said, the way that you look at the world.
Yeah. Yeah, we're man, journaling is so huge. And there was a time where I was also very averse. Like I had grown up journaling and I didn't have a lot of safety in it. Like I would have these teeny diaries with little locks on them and my siblings would just yoink the locks off and stuff. So like as I became a young adult, like in my early 20s, I was journaling again. I was feeling like this is such a safe place for me to do this. And then that ex-boyfriend that I had mentioned read my journal one day while I was gone. And this was not long after my older sister had died and we were living together at the time. So I was like already in a fucking rough spot. And then he reads my journal. I come home to see that he not only read it, but destroyed it because he was so mad about stuff that he read in there about previous relationships, like stuff that did not involve him at all. And after that, and especially because of how like incredibly surveilled I was in that relationship, like I had no privacy at all. I felt so unsafe when it came to writing in a journal after that that it actually took a lot of time and effort for me. Like even today, I still find myself writing with that kind of thought of like, what if someone reads this? And I'll write that down too. Like now I'm worried that someone might read this. And it was something I had to kind of like surrender into. Like, well, I know this is valuable. So if someone is gonna fucking read my journal again and shame me for it, I guess I don't care because I can't imagine thinking that way at this point in my life. Like seeing someone's most vulnerable thoughts and saying, like, oh, this means this about them. So it's like, well, we're obviously seeing things so different. Like, we're completely different perspectives here. I don't really need to worry about someone who would do that. Like, they're living in a different reality from me. So
Yeah.
that's fine. Like, that's their shit, not mine.
And when you're living your life authentically, all of a sudden, because I have those same thoughts. What if somebody reads my journal? What if my ex-wife reads my journal? And I just realize, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and Like
Mhm.
that shows me the people that should be in my life and shouldn't. And now that I'm living authentically, like these aren't secrets. I'm not keeping these from people. This is just me putting this on the page to, and really what it is. And for myself, and this is something to know about yourself too, is prompts, questions, do those work for you? Do they not? And I actually now have two journals. Yeah. Shouting out Adam up for the challenge again, because yeah. And one of them has prompts, one of them does not. And one is for like how my day was yesterday, like big energy hangups that I have. And by,
Mm.
energy hangups, I mean like things that my mind gets stuck on or that has me worried, anxious, sad, a lot of different things. And for me, this is still something I'm working on. It very rarely is happy things. Very rarely
Yeah.
is good things. Very rarely is things that I should be proud of, stuff like that. Sometimes it is, but um, I just write that down and figuring that out, how that can work for you is such a big that goes for everything. Like taking something and making it work for you. That includes words, changing
Mhm.
the meaning of words that people use a lot so that it relates to you through metaphors, analogies, pictures that you see in your mind. However, you can make it work for you is perfect. And don't worry how people are going to judge you because it's working for you.
Mhm. Yeah, you're the only one who has to live your life. So if other people have thoughts on it, that's kind of their shit. Like
Yes.
it's that whole don't accept criticism from those you wouldn't go to for advice. Like most of these people who may criticize any of the things we're doing are probably not ones we'd be hitting up for feedback anyway. When it comes
And
to
that's
journaling,
powerful.
a lot of people find themselves in the same situation where they realize that everything they're writing is negative, and depending on how they work with it, sometimes it becomes a detrimental thing. So I think like the prompts are super useful. And I think an extra practice can be brought in there. Like if you are a person listening to this and you tend to journal out these like conscious streams of thoughts and it's just like, fuck this, fuck this, fuck this kind of energy, or here's where things were really hard, or this is really upsetting for these reasons, you can always go back and examine that in terms of like looking for integrations. So the second page of your journal after this big stream of just shit coming out of your head can be, what do I want to learn from this? How do I apply some of this stuff to making sure that tomorrow is more supportive for me? If I see that being around these people makes me feel like shit, do I need to have a conversation with some friends right now? Or do I need to maybe start choosing some different relationships? And like, all of this sounds very simplistic and surface here, the way we're talking about it. Obviously, like the idea of shifting relationships is a big deal and not to be taken lightly, but that is the reality is sometimes we need to view these pages of shit coming out of our minds so that we can say, what do I want to do about it? Because if every day you write in your journal all the things that suck, what is that doing for you other than offering you a place to purge, which is absolutely valid and necessary? But if you're not looking to kind of just be in that same position a year from now, if there is some kind of interest in integration or self growth or self actualization or any of those things, or joyful living, maybe, then there's a next step that needs to be taken of how do you, and this is something that in my classes right now they're referring to gladdening the mind. Now that you have seen the state of things and you have addressed them, we're not averse, we're not trying to deny their reality. Once you put that plan into motion of how you're going to integrate, now you can begin the process of shifting away from this negative bias that we know we have and deliberately bringing in and cultivating feelings of equanimity or of joy or of gratitude or sympathetic joy. Sometimes that's more accessible to people because the idea of feeling joyful ourselves can feel wrong, which like fucking sucks. Any of you who
Yeah.
struggle feeling like it's okay for you to feel
Yep.
joy, I'm so sorry that you are feeling that way. You do absolutely deserve to feel joy, even if you have behaved atrociously in the past. So if it's more accessible to you, then think about people you really love and care about and imagine them having moments of joy. Or, think about the last time that you saw someone you really care about grinning from ear to ear. Tap into the warm, fuzzy feelings that come from that sympathetic joy. Whatever it takes for you to kind of begin that deliberate process of shifting from letting the negative bias be the dominant force in your mind and using that incredible power you have as the conscious entity kind of floating around and utilizing the brain and body to shift it towards something that's more wholesome, shift it towards something that allows you to feel a little lighter in your body.
Mm. And I'm so glad that you touched on that because you literally told me why it's not a hang up for me to write about the negative things. Because in my writing down what these, energy snags are that I have, I'm talking about how I'm shifting and the lessons that I know and I learned and implementing it into my life. And like I'm intentional about the way that I live my life now,
Yeah.
in a way that I wasn't before. And I just heard a quote earlier in the week too that was, the person who has to live with your choices are you. So why are you allowing other people to make choices for you that they don't have to live with? And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, damn, all right. And it was pretty early in the morning. It's like, that is that is true. And that is fact.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something to think about when you are listening to people and they're telling you these things and they're saying that I'm right, you need to do it this way. Do they have the same context that comes from living your life? Or do they have completely different context? And the truth is, they have completely different context. It
Mm-hmm.
worked for them. There's a reason I say the only right way to sobriety is this way that works for you. That's
Mm-hmm.
because the way that I stopped drinking is not a way that works for a lot of people. I'm a stubborn asshole, and it fucking helped in that situation. And that's how that doesn't work for a ton of people. That's okay. I, that's something that I've come to terms with, and um, it's it's so interesting how the way that you describe a lot of taking the world and validating your feelings and emotions, and then how can you find something that lifts you up, but not focusing on that everything is great, everything's
Mm-hmm.
positive, you got to find the positive in everything. Like that is also not a good outlook on life because it's not real.
Mm-hmm.
And as somebody who has learned that my opinion about myself has zero credibility, so I need to legitimately ask people to offer their opinion about me so that I can find an opinion that has credibility. And
Mm-hmm.
it's something I'm still working through. And I just want to let people know that if you are in that place, it is possible to get to a place where you can feel pride in yourself. You can get to a place where you feel peaceful and content. And really, when people talk about happiness, that's generally what they're talking about is peace, contentment, serenity. It's not excitement and joy that's constantly there, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
is a place of gratitude and it is a place of living from love first and not fear first.
Mm.
And those shifts can happen in so many different ways. Um, One way that I was able to shift it was through neutral self-talk because I learned I hated myself. I deep self-loathing and I learned it through my kids because I held it against them that they love their daddy.
Mm.
And because I'd been working on myself and being more aware of the self-talk, I caught that very quiet low voice that had been there my whole life and I didn't realize it, that I was holding it against my kids and other people that they love me. Where
Mm.
did that come from? Oh, I hate myself. Well, I wasn't going to be able to look in the mirror and say, "Oh, hey, look at everything you've done in your life. You're just so amazing. I love you." Like I still don't do that. I still don't do that. But what I can do is I can look in the mirror and shrug and say, "You're okay.
Mm.
You're okay." And just take things from a place of when I hear that critic, when I hear the asshole get really loud and tell me why I suck and why I can't do something and why I should just stop. I should just give up. I should just not talk and stay small. I can hear that and say, okay, what are you saying in this moment? What are
Mm-hmm.
you trying to protect me from? What is the truth in that? Scared? What am I scared of? The unknown, anxiety. What if I get this wrong? What if I don't know what I'm doing? Guess what? Nobody knows what they're doing. And so being able to work through that and actually like have an inner coach and just be more of a friend to yourself. You don't have to get to this place of, I love myself. You can get to a place of, I'm okay with myself. And that's so much further above where you were that it feels like you almost like you love yourself, but it's attainable. It's very
Yeah.
attainable. And I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I think that's really important too, because like in my community, we talk often about making sure we're not doing the whole like, let's just put a spin on it. We're not gonna play the spiritual bypassing game. We're not gonna play the like
Yes.
positivity over everything. Don't let your vibes be low. These feelings are
Good
low
vibes only.
vibrations. Like, yeah, we're not gonna play that. So we talk about realistic positivity, which is acknowledging sometimes shit sucks and also acknowledging you can get through it. I read a book called It Takes What It Takes years ago by Trevor Moawad, and he was talking about self talk in there. And he essentially said the same thing. Like, if you're going in reverse, you can't just jam it into going forward now. You got to first hit neutral. And that's where I think the majority of us really do
God.
need to start is to hit that neutral line of thinking. And this is another reason why journaling, whether you do it by pen and paper or like online, or or you actually like speak it out into like a voice thing. One of the things I've seen a lot is from like really prominent writers is they would essentially express the same sentiment, which is I write to figure out what I know. Our brains are only capable of holding so many things at once. And if you are trying to gain a deeper form of self understanding, it's almost a necessity to write it out so that you can see it much more clearly. Because our thoughts are just whirring by. They're just going so fucking fast that if you're sitting there trying to work through the language and get yourself to a more neutral standpoint, it can feel overwhelming. So it might be useful to just write down, okay, what are the top 10 tunes right now from my brain? What are some of the leading themes of the narratives coming out of my mind? And once you've written them down, a lot of times you see them and you're like, that's goofy as shit. Are you kidding me? And other times you see them and it's like, oh, owie, that one hurts. I just found out that I hate myself. That fucking sucks. Okay, so
Yeah.
now that I have these things written down, how do I want to speak to myself? What language can I offer in response to these things? And then to go a step further again, understanding our negative bias, understanding our conditioning. And this is also a distinction that I wanted to make. Like we speak about how like I think these things, your brain thinks thoughts. It presents them to you after the thought has originated in your mind. We take ownership of our thoughts as though, like, oh, I just had this great idea. No, your brain was probably working on that for a fucking year while your conscious awareness was bouncing between all of these different things you consume every day, all of these different thoughts. And then suddenly it presented this kind of final formulation to your conscious awareness. And then you got the little tickle of, oh, I did it. And that's the same for all the shitty thoughts. That's the same for all of these unkind belief systems. They are originating out of a brain, out of a mind that has been taught to think a certain way, to view things a certain way, to exist a certain way. So being able to kind of create that additional separation gives you a little bit more space to play with it. Like, wow, my brain thinks I should hate myself. How interesting. Why? Where do I think that came from? How do I want to address it? So then going into the proactive stuff, if you know these are the top 10 tunes of a given day, the same types of really unkind, really demotivating, really unpleasant, unnecessary, cruel thoughts, even, now you can make a list of some affirmations. You can make a list of some belief systems you want to start to build. And I think when people think of affirmations, a lot of times they think of them in that, like, oh, I am a body of light and I am this beautiful
Yes.
rainbow being. And it really, like, it can be that. Some days I'm feeling very, kind of equanimous, very light, and I can speak to myself with this lovely, flowery language. Other times it's a lot more direct, it's a lot more straightforward. I can do hard things. I am capable. Like, I tell myself often that even if I were a base model human being, and that's like in the moments where I'm doubting my own intelligence and stuff, like, even a base model human is capable of outrageous things. So even if I don't have the intelligence levels I would like, even if I don't have the communication levels that I would like, even if, I'm still capable of so fucking much just by being a human. Holy crap. So, like, having those lists of these are the common things my brain kind of shows me, and here's how I'm going to start to respond, gives you something you can do reactively. Oh, here you are again, thought about being undeserving of joy. Let me introduce you to this other thought I have that says everyone deserves joy, even me. And then in advance, you can be kind of programming this shit into your brain. You can write it on your mirror, you can write it on your refrigerator. Because I know about habituation, I make sure to mix it up a bunch. So I'll have, like, I'll realize I'm struggling with something and I'll tell Siri to remind me of it at some completely random date and time, like, hey, on this day tell me you can do it, or whatever, anything. I am a person with good time management skills is something that I throw at myself a lot. So you can start to build in language that is supportive, encouraging, compassionate, and build it in to every moment of your life so that it's a lot more present, so that the intake is a lot higher in terms of, compassionate, kind self-talk compared to the stuff that's kind of already behind the scenes been running for years. So
Mm.
it's really fun to be able to use self-talk proactively and reactively. And I think, like, as one final kind of note on this, I think people always think they have to go big, that you have to address the, like, immediate, like, the self-hate kind of stuff. But you can use this as a way to show yourself that it's real by picking something fucking tiny. Like, I proved to myself that the science behind affirmations is legit by using affirmations and visualizations to change my skincare routine years ago. Like, I realized I was tired of my skin breaking out all the time, which now it's hormonal, so we're in a different land with that. But I just had shitty habits. I would finish stream at the end of the night, I would wipe my face with a makeup wipe, and I would go to sleep, and that was it. And I felt very envious of other people who had these wonderful routines. So I said, okay, I'm going to change this. I am a person with a good skincare routine. I take good care of my skin. I care for my skin well. Every variation you can think of that was present tense, positive language, I wrote it on my mirror. I would say it randomly to my partner. I would have it as my phone alarm randomly. Like, every chance I got, I kind of reintroduced that language to myself. And then every night, I forced myself to go and actually wash my face and put on moisturizer. And after about a month of me just, like, blasting my brain with the words, I'm a person with a good skincare routine, I take good care of my skin, I love how it feels to wash my face every night, I had the first moment where I was laying on the couch after stream, tired, hadn't worn makeup that day. So I was like, oh, I don't even need to. It's fine. And my brain lit up so hard and was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? You are a person who washes your face every night. Go to the fucking bathroom. It's going to take 2 minutes. Are you kidding me? You know you're going to feel better after. And I literally, sitting on the couch, put my hands up in the air and I was like, okay, okay, I am going. And I was shook that it took about a month of this, like, kind of aggressive approach to it, but it worked. So if you're struggling with self-talk and you want to show yourself the power of your brain, pick anything. I'm a person who takes out the garbage every time it gets to the top. I am a person who always puts my shoes away. Pick something small and just reiterate it every chance you get, proactively and reactively, and watch what happens. It's really fucking cool.
it's it's amazing how those things they get taken over, right, by social media, by people, and then all of a sudden it becomes these buzzwords and stuff. But if you break it down and you actually look at it and you can see where it can be useful, all of a sudden things become not like just the approachable and oh, I don't have to be jaded going through my life. I don't have to do these things that I don't necessarily want to do. I just have to change my mindset around it and maybe talk to people and talk to myself as well. Like, the amount that you can grow as a person is directly proportional to the amount of honesty you can have with yourself.
Mm,
And when you realize that and you can get vulnerable with yourself, because that's a lot of us don't want to be vulnerable with ourselves, even surface level vulnerability, we tend to gloss over. When you start to be vulnerable with yourself, it makes it easier to be vulnerable with other people because you
mhm.
realize that, well, I know this is true for me. So whatever they react with, that's them.
Yep.
Oh, shit. Right. And, what you're talking about, I talk about self care this way too. Like, self care is an incredible way to increase your self worth. And it's not splurging, it's not
Yeah.
even spending money on yourself. It's showing yourself that you are worth taking care of. So for me, brushing my teeth twice a day, similar to like the skincare routine. Like, I have changed my skincare routine in the morning. I'm working on it at night, but like all of this stuff is that's self care, right? Like showering in the morning, changing my morning routine so I feel better. All of this is self care, and all this is building up your own self worth and you're proving it to yourself. And all of a sudden, that's raising everything up, and it's like, oh shit, okay, this is I can do it. And then you start to say, I can do hard things. I look
Mhm.
at some of the shit that I have done, and I
Mhm.
am disciplined. I am consistent, especially for someone with ADHD. And that's why I laughed when you said I am good at time management. It's like, oh, I feel that one in my heart. Like, oh shit, especially when I run out of my medication, I need to call and get, some that prescription refilled. Well, yeah, it's been 3 days. I'll do it eventually, one day.
Mhm.
But doing all of these and setting those reminders and getting creative with how you can remind yourself and do it in a way that's not full of guilt and full of
Yeah.
shame, because that is not going to keep you going.
Yeah.
That is not going to, and I talk about this with, um, you know, self-righteousness and having that chip on your shoulder. And like, I very quick to that fuck you, watch me energy, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that is a good launching energy that can get me going. But if I don't actually want to do it for me, I just want to do it to show somebody up, then when I get to that thing, I'm not going to continue doing it. And so you can start by wanting to show somebody, fuck you, watch me. But then it's actually, I'm enjoying this and I feel good doing this. I
Mhm.
want to get better at this for me. And what that can do when you're honest with yourself, in addition to all of these, it is incredible how it can shift your life from, if I get that, I can enjoy my life. And a lot of times for people, if you're honest, if I can get to retirement, I can enjoy my life. The truth is, if you can shift your perspective, you can enjoy your life right now,
Yes.
even in the shitty moments.
Yes. Yes. I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I think there was a moment earlier on in our conversation where I wanted to really emphasize that the idea of being a happy person doesn't mean that you don't have problems anymore. It's a
Yes.
genuine like acceptance of life is gonna be a roller coaster. There are gonna be moments where I feel light and there are gonna be moments where shit is really hard. And none of it is because of me. I'm not going to have problems now because I dared to have a good day. It's this is the nature of life. And I remember the specific moment. I felt like I was high and I don't think I actually was, but I was like rolling around in my bed with my partner laughing because it finally hit me one day where I was like, oh, I'm always going to have problems. do people just know this stuff? That you're just like always gonna have problems? And my partner was just like, I mean, yeah, because he's a pretty even keel dude. Like he's very calm. So it just like rocked me to suddenly be like, I don't have to take my life personally anymore. Holy shit. And then to kind of go back to the self care thing, I have an acronym SHADES that I mentioned, which is sleep, hydration, air, meaning go outside, diet, not dieting, just mindful awareness of your diet and what helps
Mm,
you feel good and give you energy, all that, exercise, and stillness. And then stillness is things like meditation, practicing gratitude, journaling, therapy, even visualization, stuff like that. So if we're looking to integrate these things into our lives, we can do it proactively and reactively. Proactively being creating a schedule that makes sure that you're prioritizing all of those things because you are existing in a body and your body has needs. And this I think is more in the like woo woo side, but I heard this quote once that said your body is completely loyal to you, and it like kind of hurt my heart a little bit because there are so many moments where I feel like I have just been like yelling at my body, and that includes my brain, to perform at a certain level when I was not giving it the tools or resources that it needed to do so. So this notion of this like sweet body just being like, I'm trying my best, dude, but you haven't given me water in a day. It kind of hit. So being able to understand that this has to be a priority and that you can look at it from a very, logical standpoint of just this human entity you operate requires certain things like sleep, hydration, air, diet, exercise, and stillness. So if you prioritize those things, you are likely going to have more of the resources available to meet the challenges of your life. When it comes to actually implementing these routines, it's like people view things in this very binary all or nothing way. They try 1 week of time blocking or of scheduling or of self care. And oh, I didn't really feel anything. Oh, I forgot to do it on this day. What's the point? I did it for a month and then fell off. Okay, try again. That's it. Forever, basically, forever. You will be, you're never going to get it perfectly right because you will never be able to be fully aware of all of the variables. You may have a sick schedule where you get up every morning at 5 and you hit the gym and you meditate and you practice gratitude and you have therapy. You've got a great diet. You've got great social circles. You've got all this stuff going on. And then one thing goes wrong. And suddenly you can't go to the gym anymore, or maybe you lost your job, or you have kids now. So your schedule is nuts. Anything can change. So the program, the schedule has to change too. So if you have previously had a schedule that was really useful for you, you've had habits that helped you a lot and you fell off, there is no need to blame or shame yourself. It's just, where did I fall off? When did I stop doing it? What were the conditions of that? What were the circumstances? And how do I take that information and apply it moving forward? And then a week later, when it happens again, okay, what happened this week? I was doing really great staying off social media, and then I spent a fucking day on Twitter. What happened? Oh, it turns out it happened because I was feeling sad. Okay, what do I want to do next time? How am I going to keep that in mind for the week ahead? So it's that, awareness. We're never going to get it perfect. And that's completely and totally okay, is acceptable, is normal. Just keep trying.
and that is so applicable to sobriety, addiction, changing these massive habits. I want to make this change because I know it's not good to me. Well, I'm not feeling good. If I'm not feeling good, why not do that thing? Well, because
Mm,
that thing made you feel worse. If you're being honest, it's just in the moment you're not feeling good. So,
mm-hmm.
right. And I went through this in back in like June, July. I'm looking at myself and I'm like, why do I feel like my nervous system is constantly activated? Why do I feel like I'm on edge? I feel like I'm going backwards. I'm not moving forward in my life. And I'm stuck at all of these levels. What is going on? And I did two things. I looked at what was I doing when I was feeling my best? And I
Mm,
realized I was working out and doing kung fu and I'd fallen off of that, right? And doing all this stuff. My diet, I was cooking more often. I was, and it wasn't like I wasn't on a diet. Like you said, it's that mindful eating. What
yeah.
is that? Mindful nutrition. I think that's the,
Mhm.
and when I heard that, I was like, oh, I kind of started doing that and I felt better. So now there's a name for it. Cool. And I was like, okay, what can I do to bring those back and start doing those again rather than being like, why did I stop doing those? I know why I did. And the second thing that I did that I do every week now is I do what I call an energy audit. And
Mm,
my friend Erin Brown, she says, you got to audit your orbit because a lot of people are aware you are the sum of the five closest people to you. So audit your orbit. Are these five people the best five people for you, or is there one, two, three people? Maybe it's all five holding you down. So do you need to make a change there? And we were talking about relationships, and it's like I took that to my energy. Like I need to audit my energy weekly. Where am I putting my energy? Am I putting it into my business? Am I putting it into things that are helping me to move forward? Or am I focusing on the past? Am I focusing on things that are just keeping me stuck? And am I getting comfortable with the chaos again instead
mm,
of embracing the discomfort for me that is the calm and embracing the discomfort that is growth?
mm,
And that has been so, it's made like since August, my life has really moved forward. My business has moved forward. Everything, and people have mentioned like there was a shift in your videos. You could just feel it in your energy. All of this, I don't know what it is, and I'm like, I think I just embraced my authenticity even more and leaned into it harder. And so those two things you can, if you can look at and be like, okay, what can I do moving forward? Is really, it's important for making these changes too.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and there's so much to talk about, and we've gone for an hour and a half, and I would love to continue this conversation. Um, I think this is a great place to start to wrap up. But one thing that I wanted to ask you before we get there is, what is a good starting point for people with meditation?
Hmm. That's a cool question. There are so many different types of meditation that it's really going to vary based on your own needs and your own experience. Like, I find just a simple focus on the breath to be a beautiful form of meditation. For certain folks with trauma or, any kind of issues around the breath, that might not be a good anchor. So, for some folks who find themselves to be really fidgety and unable to sit down, walking meditation or standing meditation can be really great. I think guided meditation as a whole is a really useful starting point. I love the app Calm or Insight Timer or Headspace. You can look up guided meditations on YouTube or even Spotify, like they're everywhere. Try, try, try. You will find some people's voices don't really work for you, some people's practices might not work for you. But if you are going into meditation expecting anything beyond awareness, you're probably going to set yourself up for some frustration. Because initially, for a lot of people, when they start meditating, they're like, whoa, I feel a lot calmer. This is great. And then shit gets real. As like I describe minds as sort of like a hoarder's mind initially. We have so much shit we have collected in our minds from the start of every day when we go on our phones. Like all of this intake is coming in from our lives that we haven't addressed. We have all of these different things kind of contained within our minds. And as soon as you sit still, your brain starts to kind of show you these piles of shit. Like, what do you want to do with this? And people tend to think that that is a sign that something is wrong with them. Like, oh, I can't meditate. My mind races the whole time. You just gained some awareness. Now you know your mind races. As a further kind of question, you can say, like, what are the top 10 tunes? What are some of the themes of the mind racing? It's just learning how to see the value in awareness is really huge because you are not going to feel calmer after every single meditation. You're likely to feel a little more centered, a little more grounded. But if you're feeling really sad at work or something and you go take a 5-minute meditation, and in that sitting or that walking, you see the reality of where that sadness is coming from, you may come out of that meditation feeling sad That's okay. Now you're at least able to be with it. It's no longer being pushed away. It's no longer being like kind of stomped or trampled on by 1,000 different context switches from TikTok or Instagram or whatever. Now you can see it, you can feel it, you can experience it and let it pass in its own time. So to get started with meditation, pick any type of meditation and try it. And if it doesn't feel resonant to you, try a different one. If that one doesn't feel resonant to you, try a different one. Maybe meditation as a word is still like a little weird to you, so try mindful movement like tai chi or qigong or yoga or something that's gentle and invites you back into your body. I heard this Tara Brach, who's one of the teachers of the training course that I'm going through right now, talked about how a lot of us find ourselves disconnected from our bodies, and it kind of becomes this wilderness for us that we get a little afraid to investigate it because it's unknown. It could go any different way. So you can kind of frame it as this is an adventure into the wilderness. It might be wild as shit in there. I'm ready to see what it shows me. Because I think a lot of us feel brave when it comes to external adventures. There's lots of things we'd like to try. There's nothing wilder than your own human experiences in your bodies and minds. There's genuinely not going to be anything more interesting or intense, I think, than what you will find within the contents of your mind and within the physical felt senses of your body. So trust yourself to go wander in the wilderness and come back. Find something that grounds you. It can be a memory of someone you really care about. It can be the feeling of your body in the chair. It can be the feeling of your breath. Let yourself go exploring this beautiful wilderness you exist within. There's so much more to you. And if you don't take the time to sit and observe, you're missing out on such a rich experience of your existence. So, any form of meditation, give it a shot, see how it works for you. It offers such a beautiful invitation to self-understanding, and I think underneath that is the most beautiful aspect, which is that self-compassion. When you really see the way that your brain and body operates, when you see the forces driving your thought patterns and behavior patterns, you can develop a deep self-compassion where you're like, oof, dang, you've really been going through it. And then that gets to spread outward. You meet someone else who comes at you with some shitty energy, and you think, ooh, I know what it felt like when I was suffering. God, it must really hurt being you right now. I'm not going to take it personally anymore. I'm going to see you and hold you with as much love as I can muster. So it's a really beautiful invitation to explore.
That was so well said. And there is that the question that has like supercharged my self-discovery journey and all of this is what if I'm wrong? Right?
Mm,
When we become adults, I think a lot of us get to I need to be right a lot, like especially when it comes to your beliefs, your values, who you are. I need to be right. When you ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? Like allow yourself to try something new. What if I'm wrong that that's stupid and dumb and I'll look dumb doing it? I'm not going to enjoy it. Well, if you're right and you tried all that and you didn't like it and everything, the worst thing is you go back to doing it the way you were.
mm-hmm.
So, what if you're wrong can become that gateway to trying and finding your new favorite food,
Yeah.
trying and finding, you know, this meditation that everybody talks about. Oh shit, that I can see the benefits. I can do this. I can see how I could put this into my life. Oh, journaling. Oh shit, that is something that it kind of is cool. You know, there's just it's such a powerful set of words if you want to use it. And we've covered a lot of really amazing topics on this episode. And I love the way that you look at the world. So if people want to follow you, Jessica, how can they keep up with you?
The majority of my socials are under Mind of Snaps. So you can find me on Twitter, Instagram. I've got a Substack. Actually, I started writing recently, and that's under Jessica Bencomo. But if you go to my Twitter, I have a link tree finally, so you can find all of my links on there. My live streams are under She Snaps. And I think even though I don't live stream full time anymore, I still think that's a great place to come and get to know each other because you can ask questions in real time. And the majority of streams we have, we talk a lot about mental health and mindfulness, and it became sort of like an unintentional advice place where people could come and just ask any kind of questions they have. And I'm getting into the second year of my meditation teacher training. So early next year, I'll be able to announce my first meditation workshop. So if you're following any or all of the socials, you'll be able to see some of the information on that. And the first one will be like an intro to mindfulness. So for anyone who does want to understand more about mindfulness meditation, which is also known as Vipassana or insight meditation, and I find that to be really beautiful that that's what we're seeking is just insight.
Hmm.
That's what I'll be teaching more of in the future. And then my second classes that I intend to offer for the practicum will be probably done live. And I want to do a day-long meditation workshop on grief. So that's where a lot of it is going. But yeah, you can find me on any of those socials and hit me up, ask me questions, send me things you're interested in. I love people. I love talking to them.
It's so rewarding just listening,
Mm-hmm.
listening and not looking to share your opinion, but just listening to learn and be like, I wonder what they think about this, and then be able to ask that. And it's funny, that's a conversation. It doesn't have to deal with
It's very
trying to be right.
satisfying. Yeah, yeah. I'm reading this book right now called Clear Thinking by Shane Parrish, and it's really great. And it came to mind again as you were talking about these different prompts. I like to tell people often that the you can kind of talk to your brain the way you would like I think most people nowadays have some familiarity with AI, where you can go to something like ChatGPT or Bard and ask it a question and have it respond. Our brains are basically that. It's not your enemy. It's this hilarious squishy ball of information. And if you're asking it questions like why do I fucking suck, it's going to answer. But if you ask it a question like how do I change this behavior, the first response might be you can't, you suck. But if you ask it again like listen brain, I get it, yeah, conditioning, but let's focus on answering this problem, let's focus on answering this prompt. You can start to ask yourself prompts or invite yourself to answer questions through a multitude of prompts throughout the day. And if we're looking to broaden our perspectives, the questions what am I missing and then what else am I missing are really great in communication with others. You express what you think they just said and then say, what am I missing? And then after they say, oh, you were missing this. Oh, okay, what else am I missing? It allows you to go through life with a kind of more humble perspective of like, I know I'm not going to get it all right. And I'm okay with you telling me when I'm wrong. So you going around asking that question about something you have a firm belief in. What might I be missing here? Gives you a chance to open up and see some of the stuff that your biases might be preventing you from seeing. So I think those are two really fun, connected prompts to utilize.
Mm, those are really great. That's that's really so I'm reading nonviolent communication finally.
Yes.
Yeah, after a lot of people telling me you should read that because a lot of what you use already to talk about is in there and it'll enhance. And it's like, yep, yep, it's been absolutely wonderful. And how not just how you communicate with other people, but how you communicate with yourself. And um, that's something that has been just being able to take things that are relationship focused and okay, can I use this for myself with my relationship with myself? And yes, you can. Anything that anybody talks about relationship wise with other people, you can actually take and use for yourself and really cultivate how that is. And now all of a sudden, oh, I actually kind of think I'm an okay person. When did that happen?
Uh-huh.
And it's
Yep.
a hell of a place to be. So Jessica, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a pleasure. Um and please go follow her, you know, all those places. And this is a I can't I can't thank you enough for this. This is really great. So um everybody, let's be better tomorrow than we were today, because at least we don't make it, we tried. I love
Hmm.
you. Have a great week.